It's February 11th, 2023, and get ready because we are about to watch a masterclass. With half the test match still to be played, India has a lead of 224 runs as Australia bat again. But where we are right now isn't just any place. We are at Nagpur, where India haven't lost a test in over a decade, and a place where Indian spinners have been tying visiting batters in knots for even longer. As David Warner and Usman Khawaja set themselves for the chase, they are met at one end by India's puppet master-in-chief, Ravichandran Ashwin. This man is a key reason why Nagpur is such a fortress. It takes just 5 balls for him to get his 4th dismissal of the test. Today is not going to go well for Australia. Soon at the other end, he is met by his partner, Ravindra Jadeja, and their favourite game within a game soon begins. Who is going to get the most wickets? Jadeja comes back with one of his own, before Ashwin asserts his authority, getting Warner, Renshaw, Hanscom, and Carey. With the Aussie tail exposed, the collapse was in full swing. It's not long before India bowl Australia all out for 91 runs, in just 32 overs. It's Australia's second lowest ever total against India. Fortress Nagpur is once again defended, and Ashwin wins the game within a game, finishing with 5 wickets for the innings and 8 for the match. For the Aussies, this is the worst possible start to not only the India series, but for the rest of the year that lies ahead. A year of the biggest trials and tribulations that cricket can offer. A year that would test every aspect of their character, and a year harkening back to the glory days of old that offered a chance at immortality. The past 5 years have been some of the Australian cricket team's most turbulent. It arguably began in 2018. When TV cameras spotted a yellow-coloured piece of paper in the hands of an Australian player at Newlands in South Africa, in what is now known as Sandpapergate. The ball tampering incident rocked not only the playing group and led to hefty bans for the players involved, but created a deep eruption in Australian cricket. On one hand, the incident was serious in itself, but the penalties handed down by Cricket Australia were much more significant than those handed down by the ICC. It appeared that, to draw a line under the incident, Steve Smith, David Warner and Cameron Bancroft were made an example of. On the other hand, however, the incident had shone a light on a cricket team that had lost its way, and a culture that perhaps veered into territory that didn't reflect the wider Australian public. As Cricket Australia undertook a deeper cultural review, Australia, the team, had the task of picking up the pieces on the field. Its coach, captain and vice-captain were now all gone, at least temporarily, and a new direction needed to be found. For the Test team, on-field leadership came from an unlikely source, Tim Paine, a player who was destined for the Australian team from an early age, but was only playing his second Test series in 8 years. He was given the captaincy. He, along with Justin Langer, tried to forge Australia's new path in the international arena. For the limited overs formats, Tim Paine was also captain for a time, before Aaron Finch took over and guided the Aussies towards an unlikely T20 World Cup win in 2021. Unfortunately for Paine, while he made history becoming the first Aussie captain since Steve Waugh in 2001 to retain the Ashes in England, his tenure will more likely be remembered for its losses, especially when India won its first and second ever Test series in Australia. But it wasn't the performances on the field that cost him the captaincy. Tim Paine stepped down on November 19, 2021, after details of a 2017 incident involving explicit text messages with a former co-worker had resurfaced. An incident that Cricket Australia had known about for many years beforehand and had previously cleared him for. Justin Langer too would resign a few months afterwards, amid purported unrest in the changing room over his coaching style. Cricket Australia offered him a 6-month contract even after Australia completed a 4-0 home Ashes series win and Australia's first ever T20 World Cup victory under his tenure. It seemed that, although many Australians wanted to move on from the controversy and drama-filled past few years, it refused to go away. The person to replace Tim Paine was, to some people, a left field pick. A person who was undoubtedly one of the best players in the Aussie team, but had little to no captaincy experience, at any level. And as a bowler, was someone who was traditionally thought of as unsuited to the rigours of captaincy. But in Cricket Australia picking Pat Cummins, they had someone who could perhaps lead the next generation of the Australian cricket team, even if it was a gamble. They saw something in him, a top-level talent with a calm, collected yet confident demeanour, that a team culture could be built around, one that a nation could maybe get behind. However, being Australian captain is more than just being given the armband. The public have to accept them too, And for most of them, results have and always will be the deciding factor, especially when that captain stands in the shadows of Bradman, Benno, Border, War and Ponting. The bar is higher simply than just winning at home and the odd one away. Whether Pat knew it or not, when he took the captaincy, Australia's 2023 away schedule would be one of the most gruelling for an Aussie team in decades. It featured the hardest tours for an Aussie team, sandwiched between important ICC trophies. A 4-test series against India in India, where they hadn't lost a series at home since 2010. Then a potential World Test Championship final, followed by an away Ashes series against a revitalised England team. And finally, an ODI World Cup in India. This schedule would test any of Australia's past great captains, but for Pat, it's a baptism of fire. A year that would test all of his capabilities and define his lasting legacy as an Aussie captain. So as Mohammad Shami pinned Scott Boland in front to win the first test for India at Nagpur, Pat Cummins and Australia had stumbled at the first hurdle. Their approach to try and counter India's spin bowlers had been found wanting. And with 3 more tests to go, India now only needed one more win to retain the Border-Gavaskar Trophy. The next test would be in India's capital of Delhi. As the Aussies sent themselves into bat, they faced a barrage of short pitch bowling, with India hoping to make best use of the hard new ball. It paid off with the early wicket of David Warner, who also picked up a concussion and elbow injury, which eventually ruled him out for the rest of the test. The early wicket opened the door for spin to weave its magic yet again. And while there were some nice and sometimes risky shots, Australia were experiencing the same problems as in Nagpur. Wickets were falling with alarming regularity. Even their top scorer, Usman Khawaja, was living on the edge with his sweep-heavy scoring. After much toil, Australia were bowled out for 263 in around 2.5 sessions, with the majority of the dismissals being bowled, LBW or caught behind, indicating the value of bowling straight on a deck that was deteriorating quickly.
He's bowled in through his defence.
Was 263 really such a bad total though? It was hard to say, but given the deteriorating conditions, which India now had to bat on, it might have actually been a bit competitive. As the pitch continued to crumble, India found out just how difficult batting would be. Surviving a tricky 8-over spell at the end of day 1, Australia set about following the MO of their opponents, bowling straight, varying their lengths, and letting the pitch do the rest.
Has he taken it? This is a brilliant catch.
For every ball that was hit forcefully to the boundary, another fizzed off the surface or kept low. After putting Australia under so much pressure, India were now 7 for 139 themselves. But India's test team has a short tail, and all-rounders Axar Patel and Ravichandran Ashwin push back against the Aussie attack, mixing simplicity with brutality, while keeping a watchful eye on the one that kept low. Fortune began to favour them, with 2 and then 3 half chances missed by Australia. That 263 total coming ever closer. It would take 2 top quality catches to dismiss both of them, with India eventually being dismissed for 262 runs, only 1 run behind Australia. After both teams batted, the match was close to dead even. As we moved to day 3, in a game that was so evenly poised at its halfway point, Australia was only 1 down with a vital lead of 62 runs. Keen to get it well past 200, they were starting to push ahead towards victory. But day 3 showed just how quickly spin can change a game in India. And just like Nagpur, it was Ashwin and Jadeja playing their game within a game that made the difference. Australia's batters continued to hit across the line, only to be punished for it. Within the space of 15 overs, 7 wickets were taken, with Matthew Hayden on commentary voicing the frustrations of Australian fans watching around the world.
Well, that's the 4th wicket in 11 balls. You talk about frenetic. Again, another sweep shot. It is not bouncing, and it's not turning. It's disappointing. I know you've got to have a method, but there's a time and a place.
Australia were all out for 113. On day 3 itself, they were 9 for 51, Jadeja with 7 for 42, and Ashwin 3 for 59. It would take them 26.4 overs of sometimes nervy batting to reach this total and take the win. But more importantly, it gave India a 2-0 lead in the series. Yet again, India had retained the Border-Gavaskar Trophy. With the trophy now out of reach, the press began to dissect what went wrong with Australia's approach. The Aussie captain himself had said that he had asked the batters to be proactive and brave in their approach. to put the pressure back on the bowlers. This directive might have led to the overuse of the sweep shot, which is, in the right situation, an effective method, but one, as we have just seen, that is fraught with risk. Some aspects of the press argued that a mixture of the spin-friendly conditions, plus 2 Indian bowlers being at the top of their game, had frazzled the Aussies and got into their heads. A 2-week break was next on the cards for the teams between the second and third test, a chance to refresh and recuperate for some, but for Pat Cummins, something much more important needed his attention. Before the Indian tour had even started, his mother had been going through cancer treatment, and as the tour went on, her situation had deteriorated to the point where she had started palliative care. Cricket, as it rightfully should, took a back seat for Pat at this time, as he flew home to be by his mother's side. Steve Smith took the captaincy, and Australia was still yet to confirm their place in the World Test Championship final, now having to salvage what they could from this tour. They may have been hoping that a test at a usually pace-friendly and picturesque Dharamshala would help them, but due to concerns that a harsh winter had meant the Dharamshala outfield wasn't up to playing standard, the match had been moved to indoor. It meant that Lyon, Murphy and Kuhnemann continued as Australia's 3-pronged spin attack. Travis Head started as opener for the injured David Warner, along with Mitchell Starc and Cameron Green being brought in. In indoor, Starc charged in ball 1 and got Rohit Sharma to edge one to the keeper. It seemed like the perfect start for Australia, except the umpire didn't raise his finger, nor did the Aussies ask to review it. And then ball 3, another great ball, smashing into Rohit's pads, another appeal, and another given not out. Again with no review. In the first over, Australia had missed 2 opportunities. I guess sometimes all you can do is laugh. India's openers pushed to make best use of the reprieves. The green tinge on the pitch would only hide the true nature of this surface for so long. And as soon as spin was introduced, it showed its true colours.
He's gone! Beaten in the flight!
India's batters could only do so much as the ball began to turn big, with it barely even bouncing at times. It would take only 7 overs of spin for India to be 5 down, and by lunch they were 7 for 82. 8 overs after lunch, they were bowled out for 108 runs. There could be an argument to say that they were perhaps too aggressive in their approach, but runs, any amount of runs, would be valuable on this pitch where any ball could have a batter's name on it. Matthew Kuhnemann took 5 for 16 in his first ever Test fifer. There was no time for celebrating though. India would open with spin from both ends, Jadeja's 4th ball of the day getting Travis Head. If he didn't overstep, he would have had Labuschagne shortly afterwards. Early wickets were the aim from the start to make best use of the small Indian total. But for perhaps the first time in the series, in the most trying of all conditions in the series so far, the Australians actually stood up, toiled hard and weathered the storm around them. But at tea, at still only day 1, Australia was within touching distance of India's lead. Marnus making the most of his second chance and Khawaja bringing up his half-century in the last session.
99 for 1 now for an excellent half-century.
It would take a Jadeja arm ball to finally break their 98-run partnership. The middle order combined to grow an invaluable lead, but never really could push for a higher knock themselves. Jadeja, Ashwin and Umesh Yadav together dismissed Australia for 197 runs, where it could have been much more. Australia leading by 88 runs. India would have hoped to have a better innings with the bat this time, but an urge to get on top of the bowlers led to Gill's early wicket. Rohit Sharma would soon be out after as he missed a straight one that kept low. Australia's bowlers had begun to figure out the right lengths to harness the demons in this pitch, and it was plainly evident in the dismissal of Virat Kohli. This ball is pitched fuller and explodes over the slips for 4 byes, followed 2 balls later with one that's shorter, that skids on and pins Kohli in front, LBW. The main constant throughout most of this innings was a calm, collected Cheteshwar Pujara, who managed to anchor an end for an invaluable 59. He tried almost single-handedly to keep the innings together. As from the other end, India were intent on attacking Australia, giving the openings that Australia would pounce on, like this screamer from Usman Khawaja, or this from Steve Smith to finally dismiss Pujara.
Oh, what a catch! That's an absolute blinder.
It was then down to Nathan Lyon to pick off India's lower order to dismiss India for 163 all out. Lyon ended with 8 for 64, and to win their first test of the series, Australia would need 76 runs. It got off to a dramatic start. Ashwin's first ball turned and bounced, followed by this. It seemed like the start that Aussie fans had already seen twice in the series. A chance at victory ripped away by India's spinners, along with that creeping doubt that India would once again do it again here. However, for the first time, Australia's batters were getting on top of the bowling, even as they tried all manner of things, including trying to come off a short run-up and even getting the ball change to get a breakthrough. It would be Travis Head and Marnus Labuschagne that sealed this third test and finally put Australia on the board in this series, 2-1.
Puts it away to the boundary, and Australia have won the third test match, a comprehensive wicket.
This victory would also seal their spot in the World Test Championship final in just a few months. Australia finally had something to cheer about. All that was left for this tour was one final test in Ahmedabad, a chance to level the series where they'd been outplayed for the most part. There was no trophy to play for, no nail-biting finish to a series that had much of the cricket world watching, just a chance for Australia to show that perhaps the third test wasn't a fluke. Instead, that they'd finally found their bearings in foreign conditions and turned a corner, even if it was a couple of tests too late. Nagpur, Delhi and Indore had all provided conditions for matches to last just a few days, but Ahmedabad would tip things the other way in the spectrum. While the first few overs of pace indicated some help for the bowlers, with Travis Head only surviving with a little bit of luck. As the game progressed and the ball lost its shine, it quickly became evident that this would be a match of attrition. The ball kept low, but rarely did anything off the pitch, often rewarding those batters who were ready to dig in for the long haul and sacrifice strike rate for survivability. Steve Smith toiled for 38 off 135 balls, but the first batter to be rewarded would be Usman Khawaja, arguably Australia's best batter of the series, who scored a century off 245 balls. He had to wait until Cameron Green came to the crease before Australia could really accelerate. Cameron Green's tall frame allowed him to get to the pitch of the ball quicker than others, and he made batting look easy at times, on his way to his first ever Test century.
And that'll be his 100, a maiden 100, something to cherish.
Australia pushed their total well over 300, their highest for the series. At 4 for 378, Cameron Green would be finally dismissed for 114. Now with the tail to face, the wily skills of Ravi Ashwin came to the fore, getting 4 of the last 5 wickets of the innings, but not before Australia had put on another 102 runs, ending with 480 all out, their largest total of this tour by far. It had taken just over 167 overs, 2 new balls and nearly 2 days of play to get there. India still had their eyes set on victory, and their openers set out to make best use of the new ball with a cracking start to the innings.
He does go for it, and he goes for it in a manner that he loves.
They had got to 74 runs before Rohit hit one straight to the waiting hands of Labuschagne at short extra cover. Gill combined with Pujara to chip away at the big Aussie total, making best use of his patented short arm punch through both sides of the wicket. Today would be the day for his first ever Test century, likely the first of many more in his career, which paved the way for Virat Kohli, a man who had amazingly gone 41 consecutive innings or over 3 years since his last Test century, but a man whose capabilities were never in question. This would be the test where we'd see that quality shine through. He and Gill would partner for 58 runs before Gill was dismissed. It was now down to Virat to anchor the innings towards its end. It wasn't until after lunch on day 4 that after 241 balls of hard graft and professionalism, Kohli's century drought was finally over.
The wait is over. The king getting to where he deserves. 28th 100 in Test match cricket.
With only 4 boundaries in his entire innings, he completes this run, kisses the pendant on his necklace, and just gets back to work, knowing that this match isn't over. He might have only scored 4 boundaries to that point, but that milestone seemed to be the trigger to up the ante. With Axar Patel at the other end, the two started to attack with vim and vigour, Australia's total getting closer and closer. As the second new ball comes available, Kohli would soon reach 150, with Axar not far away with his own half-century, in a partnership that would eventually score 162 runs. These two would push past Australia's total, with the spinners getting well and truly battered, until Stark would finally force Patel to chop one for 79. With Shreyas Iyer out injured, only Ashwin, Umesh Yadav and Mohammad Shami were left. Only 7 runs were scored between them. Kohli would be the last wicket to fall, finishing with 186 off 364 balls. After 517 minutes at the crease, Virat walked off the pitch, getting the send-off he deserved, after what can only be described as one of his best Test centuries. The batting displays that we saw here, like Khawajas, Gills, Greens or Kohlis, are a double-edged sword. There's only 5 days in a test match, and these knocks, along with the others that ate up the deliveries, had meant that the game was only halfway completed, even though we only had just over a day's play to go. This match was heading for a draw. Matthew Kuhnemann was brought on as night watchman. He managed to survive into day 5, and when he eventually did get out, he was hard done by, with a decision that would have been overturned on review. Just like in indoor, now on the final day of the test and the series, Travis Head and Marnus Labuschagne were at the crease. The two showed a level of poise and concentration that was all but missing when Australia first came to India's shores. For 59 overs, they made sure to close out the game. Head might have been bowled by Patel for 90, but by that time, the test was just waiting to be called by the umpire. As India brought Shubman Gill on to bowl, everyone had seen enough. The fourth and final test of this series was a draw. For one side, it was a tale of defending their home and a legacy that is over a decade old now, while for the other, it was a tale of what could have been. But it wasn't all doom and gloom for the visitors. Yes, Australia lost the chance to regain the Border-Gavaskar Trophy at the earliest possible moment. But rather than throw in the towel after the second test, even as their captain was forced home to tend to his own personal matters, this squad dug deep and found something extra to see it through, to keep fighting and to give it their all. It resulted in a win on arguably the hardest batting pitch of the series, and a draw where they went toe-to-toe with India's batters, right to the end. It might not have been the result they wanted, but even in failure, there's always new things to be learnt. And hey, who knows, the next time we see batters like Travis Head and Marnus Labuschagne batting on this wicket, maybe things might be a little different. But that's for another time. Australia's time in the subcontinent had come to a bittersweet end. The first part of their epic baptism of fire was now complete, but the journey was far from over. Next for them was a voyage to a familiar place, one that had good and bad memories for Australian cricket. But this year, for the first time in a long time, it was different. There lied the chance to fill a space in their trophy cabinet that had long been unoccupied, and a chance to take on an old enemy who had a daring new persona that ordered the world to stand up and take notice, and one that was threatening to take back the one thing that Australia holds nearest and dearest to its heart, the Ashes.